Welcome to today's webcast titled Enterprise Process Governance, Best Practices Using the ARIS Platform, presented by Software AG partner Visual Enterprise Architecture, otherwise known as VEA. With the ARIS Platform, you can design, analyze, share, and improve processes. In today's webinar, you'll see how ARIS can help you gain end-to-end control of your business process management and automate governance processes to transform your business. We'll demonstrate how to enable continuous process improvements and enhance change management with ARIS Process Governance. Today's webcast will be presented by Harry Hetrick, Director of Client Solutions at VEA. VEA is a global consulting firm focused on strategic services and solutions for IT portfolio management, enterprise architecture, and business process excellence. VEA was recently awarded Software AG Partner of the Year for their leading solutions. As we move through today's presentation, I invite you to submit any questions that you may have via the Q&A box, which is located on the bottom of your webcast dashboard. We will address your questions at the end of today's program. In the event that we're not able to answer your question, your submission will be noted, and today's presenter will be back in touch with you as soon as possible. Additionally, today's presentation is being recorded. This program recording will be made available to you in an email that will be sent to you later this week from VEA. It is now my pleasure to welcome Harry Hetrick.
Thanks, Will. Pleasure to have the opportunity to present today. As Will had mentioned, I'm going to be speaking about enterprise process governance, best practices, focusing on what we call release cycle management, one of the ARIS Process Governance primary processes. Okay, the format today will be, I'm going to review some slides, and then I'll actually do a live demo. Okay, so let me get started. So what is process governance? Process governance, or business process management, BPM governance, is the use of rules and standards to manage BPM programs and initiatives. Process governance involves setting standards, defining an enterprise process framework, defining policies, procedures, and key activities, identifying process leaders and owners with the objective to support process improvement initiatives and to create more effective processes. So what are the key benefits of enterprise process governance? Mature process governance enables process transparency and increases process quality and effectiveness. Without process governance, you run the risk of having unmanaged and disorganized processes that cannot be used to support business decisions and continuous process improvement efforts. Release cycle management, also known as RCM, defines the release approval process for the review and approval of your business processes. An enterprise class process governance solution automates notifications to approvers, automates the assignment of tasks to users, supports the delegation and or escalation of tasks, sends notification reminders for late or overdue tasks, provides full audit trail or change history for all tasks performed in the governance process. Fully automates the governance process review and approval process, moving approved processes from the development library or repository to the production repository, and controlling such things as the release status and version. ARIS Process Governance, or APG, enables you to automate your governance processes. So what are the key requirements for enterprise process governance? As I mentioned before, you must have an enterprise process framework to organize and structure the process content to communicate effectively. Business process owners require a process governance solution for them to easily review and approve processes. A center of excellence organization, or COE, with a librarian role is required to manage the enterprise process framework and process assets to ensure that the process content adheres to the modeling standards and guidelines. Some governance approval processes may include additional roles, such as quality managers. Quality managers require an easy solution to review and approve process models also. The review and approval, and more importantly, the audit tracking of their process review should be part of the automated process, governance process. Finally, an effective process governance solution should support model approval procedures for both regulated and or non-regulated processes. And we find that primarily in the pharma industry. Easily automate complex approval workflows across the organization, and also scale to meet enterprise demand. So ARIS Process Governance, also APG, is the ARIS capability that allows you to define or map out your BPM governance process, create a workflow from that process, and then execute that workflow process. ARIS APG out-of-the-box governance process content has full BPM coverage. Each of the out-of-the-box APG processes can be configured to meet customer requirements. So what we see here is we have APG governance processes around modeling processes, such things as model release management, model release cycle management, modeling workflow, analysis workflow, audit trail, and checkout, check-in. So these are out-of-the-box processes that can be configured. We also have things such as change processes, continuous improvement, demand management, position change management, policy management. There's also an ERP SAP implementation to support project processes, and then BPM service center processes under configuration and evaluation request. So we look at the three examples here. We have continuous improvement process. Okay, one thing to note here is it is a process. We have multiple tasks here. So under continuous improvement process, we have the requester, which is a role supporting a process where they suggest an improvement. We have a process owner who evaluates the suggested improvement and then triggers some type of action, whether they're going to move forward with it. We have the person responsible who realizes the improvement or rejects the suggestion. And then we have the staff that deliver the additional required information. So each one of these processes has a series of steps and roles that are responsible for them. Sorry about that. So what are the key features of APG around governance process modeling? So governance processes are modeled in ARIS just like any other process. Okay, we typically model the overall governance process using a value chain diagram that controls the high-level process flow. What we also see then is with each of the higher-level processes, we detail those out in what we call event-driven process chain models. Okay, they're used to capture the governance flow detail logic for each of the higher level processes. Okay, we use the ARIS Process Automation Architect to design these processes. This is different than the ARIS Architect. The ARIS Process Automation Architect provides some additional capability around symbols and software services that are not available with the ARIS Architect. Okay, the ARIS Process Automation Architect also provides the ability to take the designed value-added chain diagram EPC processes and create an executable workflow model. One of the additional features that APG uses is something called the ARIS Process Board. ARIS Process Board is integrated into the ARIS Connect platform. Users receive a task to perform something, all right, something that's in that process based on the designed APG process. In the example shown, the librarian receives a task to review the process. The librarian opens the task, and the APG process displays a dialog which provides key information about the review request task. If you notice here, you see the name of the model to review. We can also add additional models based on whether the model being reviewed has assigned a model such as sub-processes. You also see the open process model link. That will be a link that will open the process model in either ARIS Connect or ARIS Architect based on the configuration. We see information about the designer or the modeler. And if the designer provided some type of comment when they kicked off the process, we would see that comment. And we also see the beginnings of the audit trail. Okay, so each of the actions in the ARIS Process Governance, the RCM process, is logged in the review audit trail. In this particular example here, the reviewer can either approve or reject or cancel the request. Notice the reject button is not lit up here. There is some logic in this particular process here where in order to have the reject button enabled, you must enter a comment. So that's why it's not lit up there. What you see down below is the process board. So this is, as I mentioned before, this is a feature of ARIS Connect. It's called My Task, and you would see a task. This is actually the demo, the example I'm going to go through in a couple minutes. 4.7.1.1, receive discrete raw materials. It's got an assignment date, a due date. Notice the status is new. It's assigned to the librarian. And so the librarian would open that task and this process review by librarian dialog would be displayed. Okay. So as I mentioned before, a governance process sends email notifications. This is an example of an email notification that was sent to the librarian. You see the request type. In this case, that could either be an approval of a process model or a retirement of a process. We see the list of models. So we would detail out the models that were included in the review. The reason for change, we typically request some type of reason for change, whether it's a new process or we're changing an existing process. And we see the requester's email address and then a link to the process board. So that is a link to the process board that will open up the task to review. Okay, we also support what we call task delegation that allows a user to delegate a received task to another user. So this is what I would call a one-time event. So I get a task and for some reason I'm unable to perform that task, I can delegate it to another user. So that delegated user would then go into their process board and then execute that task. Any audit trail information would be logged to the delegated user. Okay, so we also have something called task substitution. Okay, this is different than the delegation. This is, say I'm going to be out of the office. I can specify that for a given period of time, any tasks that are routed to me would get routed to a substitute reviewer. So the RCM or the APG process would automatically send those tasks to the substituted reviewer for that given time frame. And the substitute reviewer would access the taskbar, my task the same way as the original reviewer. Okay, so let's walk through the BPM governance process here called release cycle management, also known as maybe model lifecycle management. So this involves the review and release of the process model using a defined workflow process. In the example shown here, we have a modeler who designs the process. We have a librarian who executes a formal and content review. We have a process owner who approves or rejects either the new process or, let's say, an updated process. And then we have the staff who are essentially the recipients of the approved process. And they'll either be trained on it or the process is live to them. Okay, so the way this works is the modeler designs a new process or updates an existing process. This is done in the development repository or library. The modeler ensures that the model is semantically correct. We have some out-of-the-box things called semantic checks where we can run a process structure semantic check. We can check for numerous other conditions on the model. We can also configure this based on customer requirements, add additional edits. So that's fully configurable. So, but once the modeler has determined that the process model is ready for the RCM process, they would submit it. The librarian receives a notification, and that notification has the task in it. So the librarian would open up that task and would review the process model. They're looking at the process model from a process content perspective. So they're making sure that that model adheres to the standards and guidelines, is aligned to the framework correctly, and so forth. Okay, once they either approve or reject it, so if they approve it, it would go to the process owner automatically. If they reject the model, the modeler would get a notification back, and then the RCM process would stop. Okay, so if it is approved, the process owner gets it. The process owner is now looking at it from a business context perspective. Does it meet the requirements? Is it correct from a business perspective? They once again have the same. They can either approve or reject it. So if they reject it, once again the modeler gets notified, and then the process ends. And if they approve it, in this particular case, it would get published to the production library, and we notify the modeler and the process owner that the model is not available in production. So that's a typical two-level approval. This can be modified based on the type of model potentially, whether additional approvers are required. So it's flexible in that nature. Okay, all right, so let me jump into the demo. Okay, so this is sort of the process I just walked through, right? We have a modeler requester, an ARIS librarian, business process owner, and staff. So we have the value chain here, okay, where we submit the model for release. We perform the librarian review. We perform a final review based on the business process owner, and we release the model. And then 2 places we can reject the model. Either the librarian can reject it or the business process owner. And if you notice, you have the development library and the production library. Okay. All right, so the modeler, these are some of the key activities. The modeler or the requester. The modeler requester would initiate the release of the model via dialogue. The RCM process reruns a semantic check to ensure that the model is semantically correct, meets the rules. It also verifies the required process and RCM attributes. And I'll kind of walk through some examples of what those are in a minute. Performs the RCM check. So this is a typical thing that the modeler and the business process owner cannot be the same person. The model cannot be open. The model cannot be locked. And there could be a whole litany of these based on customer requirements. RCM, if there's RCM or semantic check errors, we basically send a notification to the modeler, terminate the process. If RCM identifies no errors, then the librarian gets notified. And the model is renamed and locked in development. Okay, so let me jump into ARIS Connect. So this is ARIS Connect. I'm executing this on a BPMN model today, but it is, it's whether BPMN or EPC or whatever type of model, it really doesn't matter. Okay, so this is a process model here. I have a set of attributes that got to click on the not on an object. So I have a set of attributes that we're using a couple attributes here to drive the process. So the business process owner email address. So I am I am like multiple people here. I have multiple roles. So in this particular case, so I can demo this, I'm the modeler and the business process owner. But notice here the modeler and the business process owner, I changed my name slightly so it works. So we're checking the modeler and process owner to make sure they're not the same person. But the email addresses are the same, okay? But so we require a couple of attributes to identify who the business process owner is in this particular case. And I ran this prior to the call today. So there is version 1 out there already. So there's model version 1, and I'll show you that in a couple minutes. And I've modified the model, and I'm going to submit it for review through the review process again. Okay, so that's kind of the scenario. So up here on the toolbar, we see Start Process Governance, Start Governance Process. And we have something called Release Cycle Management 2-Step Approval. So I'm going to execute it. And let me open up the dialogue. So this is the initial dialogue, the requester or the modeler. So the modeler requester can be the same person or it may be somebody different. Okay. In this particular case here, updated based on new business requirements. Okay, I'll just type something in here. Notice the I'm submitting this model for approval, the model name, okay, the reason for change. All right, so let me submit this. So this is the requester submitting it right off the model. Okay, in the background, RCM is doing the initial checks. Okay, and it will send me a notification. I shut my mail off. Okay, but you'll see it in a second here. So I'm going to go to the home page, and I'm going to look at my task. Okay, and I got the task already. So this is the librarian task. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so And we'll talk about that task in a second. So this is the notification that the librarian receives. Notice the model is listed there. This is the initial release one from the previous run. The requester email, and then the link to the process board. So this is an example of what that notification would look like. Okay, so the librarian, what does the librarian do? Okay, librarian receives the process model review email, accesses the process board, and accepts the task. RCM displays the process review by librarian dialog. Librarian has two decisions. They review the model and they either approve or reject. So on approval, RCM sends a notification to the BPO for review. On reject, RCM sends a notification to the modeler, renames and unlocks the process, and then terminates the RCM process. So all of this is happening in development. Okay, so let me go back into Connect, and I will open the task. Okay, so this is the dialogue, the process review by librarian dialogue. I have my my modeler, my models. Okay, I have an open process. So this is a link to the process model. Yeah, what the heck? Let me open it up. Let me not open it up. That's going to open up Architect. I'll open the link on BPO. So that'll open up the Architect. I don't want to do that right now. Notice the model version is 1. Okay, that's the previous model. Approval, the review type is approval. The requester email was myself, designer. I was the modeler and designer. Okay, this is the designer comment. Okay, the audit trail information's here. Okay, notice it's all getting logged. Everything that's happened to this model is logged here. Okay, and on the approval, I can either approve it without a comment, or I can add a comment. And notice the reject button gets lit. Okay. All right, so let me approve this. So now I approved it. A notification is going to the business process owner. Okay, so this would be the email that the business process owner would get. And these are fully configurable in terms of the content of what the message would be. Okay, a couple additional pieces of information in here is now you see who the librarian was. That was added in here. And then the link to the process model is here. Okay, so what does the business process owner do? Okay, business process owner receives the model review notification, accesses the process board, accepts the task, does the review of the, opens the process review by BPO dialog, does the review of the model, would open the link, and once again, either approves or rejects. So on approval, process notification is sent to the modeler, and RCM transfers control to the release model process, which we'll cover in a second. On reject, RCM sends a notification to the modeler, renames and unlocks the process, and then terminates the RCM process. Okay, so let me go back into ARIS and I'll just refresh here. So now I am the business process owner. So I get a dialog here, process review by business process owner. Okay, so this is the link to the model. And if you notice here, that should open up the model. Okay, so it opens up the diagram. So that is One thing to note here, we also changed the name of the model. So this model in development is locked right now, and we changed the name so it's under business owner review. Once this model gets approved or rejected, the model gets unlocked and renamed. Okay. So the business process owner can look at the model, determine whether they approve or reject it, and if they approve it, once again, they'll put their they'll hit the approve button. They can put a comment in if they wish, or if they reject it, they would put the comment in and reject it. So once again, we start to add additional information here. Right, we now have the designer librarian, the librarian comment here. Okay, and then the audit history is being logged. So all of the audit history. So let me approve this here. And I will approve it. Okay, so what's happening in the background now? This is a two-level approval. So now the release cycle management process is releasing this model. So the BPO and modeler are notified, okay, that the model will be released to the production library, and it gives the information about what model that is. So the release process, what's this thing do? Okay, it updates the model version and release date. It updates the audit trail attribute. It publishes the approved model to the production repository. It publishes the approved model version with a timestamp to an archive repository. It renames and unlocks the model on the development repository, sends a notification to the business process owner modeler, and now the model is approved. The model is available in the production library, read only to the staff. Okay. So let's go back into ARIS and see what we have. Okay, I'm in the demonstration database, which is the development database here. I'm going to flip over to the production. Okay, and I'll go to a quick start here. So in the folder here, okay, this is the latest model here. So before, when we started this, it was version 1. This thing, if everything happened correctly, should be version 2. Hold on. Maybe it didn't happen. Hold on. Everything was going so smoothly. Cross my fingers. Yeah. Model version 2. Okay, so this is the updated process model version 2. Notice the review audit trail. Okay, so the most recent audit information is logged at the beginning of the attribute. Submitted models approved and merged the production database model version 2. And then it basically identifies the reason for change, who the BPO user was who approved it. Okay, when it was approved, it's all time-stamped, and you see the librarian there, and then the requester. Okay, so all the actions are logged. Okay, the other thing that we do is we also write this to what we call an archive library. Okay, so hopefully I have both of them here, otherwise I gotta refresh. Yep. Okay, so here's version 1. Okay, I did this yesterday, July 23rd, and today, July 24th. So this is the exact copy of the model that is in production right now. And then this is version 1. So version 1, version 2, same model. The development library also is updated. So if I was to go and look at, I have it as actually as a favorite here. So if I look at that model here, this thing should say version 2 now. Okay, so the development library is updated. Yeah, this is version 2. But now this model is now available, unlocked, available for further edits. Okay. All right, so let me kind of wrap up here. A couple more slides. All right, so these are a couple screen prints of the emails that are sent. This is the one process release to the production database, to the modeler BPO. Okay, so a little bit more behind the scenes here. We have a graphical dialogue designer. So the dialogues that you just visualized were built with the ARIS Process Governance product. It's all drag and drop forms, and you know, it says no programming skills needed. You need to be trained to do it, but yeah. So once you're trained, you should be able to do it. So it's easy to understand drag and drop editor. Okay, a little bit about the data orchestration and the data flow. So in order to run this governance process, we need data behind the scenes. So this is an example of what that data flow diagram looks like. And so the data is passed throughout the process flow from various points. Okay, it's very similar to if anybody has used MASH Zone or Aware now, it's kind of similar to that in terms of how you build the dialogue, the data dialogue. Okay, all right. A little bit more about process automation execution. So as I mentioned before, EPC models are used to actually design the process. So up here on the top corner here, we have the process model, and then we create an executable. That executable actually generates this technical BPMN model. So we go EPC to BPMN, and that's the model that gets executed in the workflow. All right. So we use the automation, ARIS automation product to build the process flows. That comes with additional capabilities here, of which you're starting to see some of them. So this is the EPC model. These are activities, you know, EPC, but they're special activities in the automation architect. And we have various business services that are provided through the product that you can use to configure the process flows in the automation engine. Okay, a little bit more on the task automation using web services. Just give you an idea what some of those web services would look like. Okay, I think that about wraps it up from my side, Will, in terms of presentation.
Hi, Harry. Thank you very much. All right, so this is a reminder for everybody that is still with us that you can still submit your questions into the Q&A box that is located at the bottom of the dashboard a little bit to the left. So Harry, I'm going to start off with the first question. How long does the typical governance implementation take?
Yeah, good question. Obviously, depends on the complexity and customer requirements for the governance process. You know, what I reviewed today, you know, a typical 2-level review process. You know, we have some base processes, so this can be done 3 to 4 week time frame. But some of it also depends on you know, the customer requirements from a testing and also from a documentation standpoint. Okay, but you know, the 2-level processes, they can be configured rather quickly. More complex stuff obviously going to take longer.
Okay. The next question I have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
The next one I have for you is, does the solution allow for more approvers?
Yeah, most definitely. You know, I demoed the 2-level approval. We've worked on various ARIS Process Governance projects for customers. You know, we have a pharma customer who has a 3-level approval process based on, you know, adding an additional approver from a quality perspective, and also, you know, the approval process is based on the type of model too. So there's other conditions. So it can be as simple or complex as the customer requirements, you know, are provided. But yeah.
Okay, the next question I have for you. Can the model approval process be configured based on an ARIS model type to support a different number of approvers?
Yeah, so I just covered that in the previous answer, but yeah. So based on the model type, I mean, so we can identify what the particular model type is in the governance process, and the workflow can be run based on that governance, based on that model type. We could have the same approvers or different approvers. So, you know, it's an EPC process, and we have the ability to put process logic in there. Yeah, can be fully supported.
How does the governance process support the model status and versioning of the process?
Yep. So, you know, I showed you a little bit of the model status and version in the demo, but one thing that one thing that we've done in the past is since as an example, the model status is not a field that let's say the modeler or the people in the process, you know, like to manually do, right? So we've run into issues where, you know, we're trying to create a governance process, and you know, we can't make the user do something. So we found that we can control this thing through the RCM process and automatically set, let's say, the model status to, you know, some customers, let's say a draft status on development, and then when the model gets approved and released, we can automatically update via the RCM process. You know, the version, same thing. So the version of the process is fully controlled through the RCM process, and we update that via the process. Also, timestamp is something else. So when was the process released? So we also have like the release date when the process was released. So we like the RCM process to fully control as much of this thing as possible and take the human intervention out of it.
Are the previous versions of the approved process available if required?
Yeah. So they're in the archive library, as I mentioned in the when we just went through it. Yeah. So we keep the process history in the archive library. So every time a process is run through the RCM approval, that process is written to the archive library. It's got the process dates in it when it was released. It has the version, and it's time stamped. If by chance there was ever a need to do any type of comparison, that model can be used to compare with the existing process model. It could also be used as a backup if needed, but they're there. Yep.
Okay, the last question I have for you is as follows. Can you add upfront edits to ensure that the process meets a set of preconditions before executing the model approval process?
Yes. Yeah, we can add additional edits beyond the standard semantic check edits. Those can be performed on the process model to ensure that it meets customer requirements. So, I mean, some examples that we've had in the past, as I mentioned in the demo, we had like the process owner and modeler should not be the same person. The pharma company that we did it for, their quality owner had to be a valid. They wanted to make sure the quality owner was a quality owner, right? So we had that in a user group, and we validated that. You know, the RCM ARIS Process Governance attributes have to be maintained. We can check for particular values of attributes. Things like the model can't be locked. It has to be a valid user. The model can't be opened. Sometimes you run into cases where you execute the release cycle management process in the architect, and potentially someone has the model opened in Connect, right, or vice versa. So all those types of things can be done to ensure that the release cycle management process completes without any failures, right? Because then that requires the process administrator to go in and figure out why a particular process failed, which we don't want. So hopefully that answered the questions.
Okay. So with that, to everybody that has joined us, thank you for joining us. Harry's contact information is on the screen. So is Scott DeFries, VEA's sales director. If there are additional questions, feel free to reach out to them. As was stated at the top of the program has been recorded, and the team at VEA will be in touch with you with a recording of today's program later in this week. So with that, Harry, thank you very much for your time and a very informative presentation today. Our program has now ended. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thank you.